Ohio State star Jeremiah Smith has called out Miami Hurricanes football fans. He says he's got something for you on New Year's Eve.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Merry Christmas Eve and happy holidays. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the now #1 Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. On this loaded episode, we'll talk about how and why the University of Miami has been able to raise their football standard back to where it should be, and hopefully soon back to where it used to be. We'll talk about why quarterback Carson Beck and offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson really are a perfect match for one another. They both, maybe without realizing it, revealed those reasons throughout the week. But let's talk about Jeremiah Smith. Top receiver probably in the entire country. I say probably because there's some good receivers out there, but JJ is unfreaking believable. And he used to be a local South Florida legend. Youth football, high school football, Chaminade Madonna stud. But, you know, JJ, class of 2024, he made the decision that he felt was best for him to leave the area, to go up to Ohio State, to play for, Brian Hartline at the time, even though Hartline is now on his way out, and play for the Buckeyes. He won a national championship last year, and now Miami is going to try to stop him from winning another national title this year. But, Jeremiah being, a local guy, he's got all the family and friends down here. You would imagine his social media, he sees a lot of what Miami fans are tweeting about and, Instagramming about. And yeah, Miami fans this week of all weeks have been bringing up the 2003 Fiesta Bowl. So how could we forget? How could we forget the night when a national championship was stolen from Miami and given to Ohio State by that shameful official, Terry Porter? And so, yeah, JJ sees these memories on his social media. And Jeremiah this week in front of reporters said, quote, "They're still worried about it 20 years later. We got something coming for them New Year's Eve." So JJ is bewildered by the fact that Miami fans 20-some years later are talking about the Fiesta Bowl. Well, listen, I don't expect Jeremiah to fully understand it. Jeremiah Smith, what is he, 20 years old, 19 years old? Wasn't born at that time, so he can't possibly imagine our pain. But I will also say, JJ growing up in the community, he's got Miami fans in his life, in his family. I mean, maybe at some point during his childhood, it was explained to him what happened that night and the terrible injustice that occurred. So maybe now that he's a Buckeye, he chooses to ignore that and look the other way. But JJ, Miami fans still bringing it up 20-some years later. Again, you can't possibly understand what it was like not only to have that awful flag thrown, because that was not pass interference on Glenn Sharp, and I will go to my grave saying that was not pass interference. So not only having that call made on the field, but what made matters even worse was the flag came so late. We were already celebrating a national title. Players were celebrating on the field. They were shooting fireworks at the stadium, thinking the game was over and a national champion had just been crowned. And then what was it? 30 seconds later, a minute later, Terry Porter, the name of the official we will never forget, just decides, you know what? I'm going to throw a flag for pass interference, and spoiled the party for all of us. So, yeah, to have that, not only, to have that bad flag come in, but the flag came in so late, we had been thinking we're celebrating a national title, and then to have that moment ripped away. Jeremiah, if you could possibly understand what that was like for your, your parents and your grandparents and the people in your life who were watching that game when you hadn't been born yet, you wouldn't be running your mouth about this. Now, I would consider what JJ said, it's obviously not a direct call out on any Miami players. This wasn't Trey Zune saying Rueben Bain's not going to be a threat. It wasn't anything like that. He's not calling out Coach Cristobal, but he's basically telling Miami's entire fan base, y'all are whiny, petty, you're living in the past. So that's the message that Jeremiah wants to send, to the community he came up in, that he thinks we need to let it go. Well, JJ, I'll tell you, the best way for Miami fans to let that go would be to pay Ohio State back with a CFP victory on December 31st. So that's what we got coming for you. You say you got something coming for Miami, we got something coming for you, JJ. Now, listen, Jeremiah Smith, obviously, he's going to be motivated. He's going to be going up against former teammates and former opponents who play on Miami's roster. That motivation runs two ways, of course. Miami's defensive backs are going to be really motivated going up against Jeremiah Smith. And this is one of the best players in the entire country. JJ, 80 receptions on the season, 1,086 yards, 11 reception touchdowns. And Miami also has to worry about his wingman, Carnell Tate. 48 grabs for 838 yards and 9 touchdowns. Now, they're good against the pass. Miami's defense really makes their bones, though, against the run. The Hurricanes on the season, 30th nationally in passing defense. They only allow 194 passing yards per game, which is pretty darn good. But Miami is top 6 in rushing defense. So the Hurricanes they try to take the running game away from their opponent and make them one-dimensional. I know they're going to try to do that against Ohio State. And then that way, you can unleash your pass rush. Now, Ohio State is excellent on third down offense, which means they usually have short third downs. They convert them at a high clip. So Miami's going to try to force some third and longs, okay? And, whether or not Miami can duplicate this, we'll find out at the Cotton Bowl. But, the Hurricanes will try to have the effect on Ohio State's offense that the Indiana Hoosiers did, right? OSU, they surrendered 5 sacks in the Indiana loss, were held to 10 points. I don't expect Miami to hold them to 10 points, but hear me out. Miami's going to try to make Julian Sayen's life really, really uncomfortable. Get into the backfield, sack him, pressure him, frustrate him, and in doing so, you can also limit the success that JJ and Carnell Tate are having down the field. So Miami is going to look at those 5 sacks that Indiana was able to produce. Miami's going to try to produce 5 sacks, 7 sacks, which is what they had against Texas A&M in that dominant defensive performance. And most importantly, you want to make their quarterback uncomfortable, because then you've got a guy like Bryce Fitzgerald in your defensive backfield, who leads the nation, by the way, with 6 interceptions on the year, is going to try to add to that total. So it's not going to be easy, but Miami's defense hopefully will be able to send a message to Jeremiah Smith instead of him sending a message to us. And, oh, man, I can only imagine how many people are going to be watching this game on TV. Sorry, Mr. Seacrest, but I'm not going to be watching your little variety show that you do on New Year's Eve. I'm going to be watching Hurricanes Ohio State. Now, Miami's game against Texas A&M on Saturday at noon, it peaked at 19.3 million viewers. So if you take that peak of viewership, that was the highest watched first round game ever, with 19.3 million people tuned in. Now, the game averaged at 14.8 million, which was the second most. It was actually a slight tick under the Bama-Oklahoma average viewership from the night before. So almost 20 million people at the peak of the broadcast were watching Miami beat Texas A&M. And you'd figure this game against Ohio State, the defending national champs are there. You've got superstars like Jeremiah Smith, like Malachi Toney on the Miami side, and Rueben Bain and Caleb Downs back on the Ohio State side. Like, there are big-time players in this matchup. And, we talk about the Fiesta Bowl factor. Miami fans have not forgotten about that. All the players that were recruited by both programs, like, man, this thing, this might peak at 30 plus million. Like everybody's going to be watching this, man. We got so much more to talk about on this episode of Locked On Canes, including the suggestion that Carson Beck made to Shannon Dawson. My gratitude here in the holiday season for Miami football. You want to keep it locked right here, folks. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, NFL Sundays move so fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet things like next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Folks, thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network #1. And guys, we have a new feature that we launched this month, the Everydayer Club. The all-access tier of the Everydayer Club here on Locked On Canes. I give you guys exclusive episodes every single day that only the subscribers can access. It's called the Canes Colada. We had a new one earlier this morning, an exclusive newsletter, ad-free versions of all the great episodes of Locked On Canes that you love. If you want to try it out, click the link in the show notes below, or the link is lockedoncanes.supercast.com. I have so much fun with the Everydayer Club, and I know you guys are going to have fun with it as well if you sign up at lockedoncanes.supercast.com. And it makes a great Christmas present to your loved one or yourself. Sometimes I give myself presents. Check out the Everydayer Club. And by the way, for the betting line for this game, it's still Miami plus 9.5 on FanDuel. I think there's like one sports book where the numbers shrink to 7.5. But you know what? If you're a Miami fan and you want to bet on Miami, FanDuel is the spot for you, because if Miami plus 9.5 is a lot better than the 7.5 you might see in a certain other spot. So, Ohio State obviously getting a ton of respect. When you're near a double-digit favorite, I think that number is too big. Like, I really think Miami is more than capable of keeping this game within one score, within a touchdown, and winning the game outright, in my opinion. It's not going to be an easy matchup. This is probably the best defense Miami has faced all season long. Obviously, their offense has explosive playmakers who can make Miami pay, but I think Miami's defense is going to be up to the task. When we talked with the truth teller, Bruce Warner, yesterday, he thought, he just expects Miami's defense to play great. So he feels that Miami's offense is the real key in this game, because, of course, the offense was not explosive against Texas A&M. I think the swirling winds had a lot to do with that. That obviously took 9 points off the board in your kicking game with the 3 missed field goals that I believe were all wind-induced. And it took big plays off of your passing game. Something Carson Beck talked about this on Monday. You remember a pass he threw intended for JoJo Trader. JoJo was open. It was a deep ball down the field. Probably would have been a touchdown had he caught it. And the ball just sailed on him. And Beck mentioned it. When that ball left his hand, touchdown. Like, he was thinking that's a touchdown. And then wind took it like an extra 15 yards. So that's something that's not going to be a factor next week. And we're exactly 1 week away from the Cotton Bowl, by the way. This is going to be played Cowboys Stadium, Jerry Jones's world. There's a dome. It's indoors. There are no elements. Obviously, that has an effect for both teams, not just for Miami. But if you're thinking, man, we only scored 10 points last game, Miami's going to score more than 10 points this week. I'm not too worried about it. I think the passing game is going to become more explosive. Speaking of offenses, something to note, I don't necessarily think this is a negative or a positive for Ohio State, but Ryan Day, their head coach, confirmed this week he's going to be taking over play calling duties for the CFP, including this game. And that's because, their offensive coordinator, Brian Hartline, he's still technically on the Ohio State staff because he's finishing out the postseason, but he's, the new head coach in waiting at USF. So he's trying to build his staff there while he builds his game plan in Columbus. And so Ryan Day, and this has happened before when you have a coordinator who's outgoing, Ryan Day has taken the play calling duties off of Hartline's plate. Just didn't want to give him too much stuff going on while he's kind of preparing for his next gig. So Hartline's still going to be on the staff, but Ryan Day is taking the play calling duties. Now, I don't expect anything to drastically change with Ohio State's offense. I think they're going to continue, Ryan Day is going to continue to call the plays that Hartline has had success with. So I don't necessarily think that this is, a major bad thing for Ohio State. And also, Coach Day has plenty of play calling experience. He was the offensive play caller for his first 5 seasons as the head coach there. Didn't give those play calling duties up until the 2024 season. So it's only been 2 years that he hasn't been doing it. Now, it obviously changes the dynamic a little bit because Coach Day had the certain rhythm that he built being the head coach and the overseer and the CEO. And now he's got to change up that rhythm by becoming the play caller. And, who knows, maybe Hartline and Julian Sayin had such a shorthand relationship built up. Maybe Day can't fully equal that. But, again, I don't necessarily think this is a negative or a positive, but it's something to note that Ryan Day is going to be calling the offensive plays. And on the Miami side, of course, OC Shannon Dawson is going to be calling the plays. And it was funny. Dawson was pretty self-critical after the Texas A&M game. All's well that ends well. Miami ended up winning the football game, and I thought Dawson's best play calling was on the final drive. You give it to Mark Fletcher 5 times to just destroy Texas A&M up the gut. And then I thought that the final play call of that drive to do the touch pass to the perimeter to Malachi Toney was perfect timing for that because, again, the Aggies had been gashed 5 straight times inside, and then you mix it up and use Malachi Toney. And it was also perfect because you gave Toney his redemption, right? Because he was feeling terrible after that fumble on the previous drive. He got to close out the drive with a touchdown. So I thought Dawson was magnificent on the final drive, but yeah, there was a lot of stuff that didn't work earlier in the game, and he admitted it. He said, I got way too cute. But, one of the reasons why Dawson decided to call the plays the way that he did on Miami's final offensive possession was because his quarterback told him to. He took the input from Carson Beck, and they have that sort of a relationship. And Beck talked about it on Tuesday. He said, quote, "It takes time to build any type of relationship, a bond, a trust with a coordinator. That trust from me to him and him to me as well is key. There are things from this vantage point on the sidelines we don't see the same," he said. Because remember, Beck, he's on the field. Dawson's on the sideline. He says, "It's important we talk to each other. Throughout that game, we were running the ball 10 yards a clip. I could see just as the game evolved, our guys were leaning on Mark Fletcher. A brutal physical battle," he said. It was war out there. Those 2-yard, 3-yard runs in the beginning turn into long gains, he said. "I saw their defense. You could just see the way they were playing. They were playing their butt off, but our guys were just physically imposing their will on them. I was like, we are physically dominating them. Just go smash mouth right at them, and we'll be able to go right down the field. That last drive, go right at them. 60-yard run right out of the gate. We played very physical." And yeah, again, that was the suggestion that Beck made to Dawson. And Dawson, he said that, Carson Beck told me we should be running it up the gut. Now, this relationship is so important from 2 angles. Number one, for Shannon Dawson, not every coordinator, not every football coach is willing to take suggestion from their players. There's a lot of coaches out there that are, I'm the coach, you're the player, I know you don't, my way or the highway. I respect the fact that Shannon Dawson is open-minded enough and he has no ego that he takes suggestion like that from his players. I think that's a fantastic quality in an offensive coordinator. Now, you also have to have the wisdom and judgment not to let the players run the show. You can't just let, hey, Carson Beck call the you have to know when to pick your spots, right? So it takes wisdom, and it also takes a lack of ego for Dawson to recognize when he should be listening to his personnel. I love that from Shannon Dawson. And then from Carson Beck, right? If he was, a freshman first-year starter, Beck probably would not have the wisdom or the stones to make suggestions to his OC. But with all of Carson's experience, right? What is he now, 35 and 5, 36 and 5 as a starter? Like, he's been through so many battles in the SEC and now a playoff game at Miami, that Carson, he has the maturity and the understanding of football to be able to make suggestions to his coordinator. So I think the relationship that these guys have is great. And I know, obviously, Dawson had a similar thing with Cam Ward last year. Cam Ward, very football savvy as a super senior, made suggestions, took input, Dawson did from him. And it's the same thing with Carson Beck. I think this is the perfect relationship that these two guys have. And I appreciate their bond. Okay. When we come back, folks, I need to shout out some players and some coaches and some front office folks for making sacrifices and for understanding what it was going to take to bring the University of Miami football program back to this standard. And we're not all the way back, right? Like, I saw, a couple of the talking heads on TV are like, yeah, the U is, I have trouble even saying that B word, right? I'm not going to say Miami is fill in the blank until they hoist that 6th national championship. I'm not there yet, but I will say the U is back to work, and the U is climbing their way back to prominence. And it took not a village, it took a very large, booming metropolis to get them to this point. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. I am Alex Donno, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to the everydayers for being here and consuming our content, for sharing our content, and for being so gracious and nice to us here on Locked On Canes. As I'm closing in on 4 years on this channel, which is awesome. And I'm still here because you guys are so awesome, and I enjoy what I do. And I also enjoy this network. Locked On does a fantastic job. And thinking, folks, about on this Christmas Eve, I'm very grateful first to Mario Cristobal for bringing his passion for the University of Miami, his alma mater, and for bringing his tireless work ethic back to this program to try and raise the standard back to where it was when he played here. He won 2 national championships, 89 and 91 at Miami. And I'm grateful that Cristobal's staff, and I think he hired these people for this reason, that his staff shares his work ethic, right? I mean, while a lot of us out there are going to be enjoying our Christmases, they're going to be watching film, they're going to be practicing, they're going to be preparing for the Buckeyes. They have to sacrifice holidays to do what they do, right? I'm thankful especially for DC Corey Heatherman, who has transformed a Miami defense that was the team's Achilles heel last year into now the strength of the team. He made that transformation in 1 season. Now, it's not just him. Miami has some great players who are stepping up, but he's the leader of that D. I'm thankful for everything we just talked about for Shannon Dawson, for his adaptability, his willingness to collaborate with his players into making his offense better. I love the way he takes input from his QB. Not all coordinators are willing to do stuff like that. I have the utmost respect for Miami's players. This is not just the most talented group that Miami has had in decades. They are that, but they're also mentally strong. This team could have easily folded like a tent after the SMU loss, but instead they turned a corner, and they've now won 5 straight. Third-year players especially, and I'll tell you why, but players like Rueben Hurricane Bain, Francis C.C. Mauigoa, Mark Fletcher Jr. By the way, Fletcher confirmed those reports that he is staying at Miami. He's coming back for his senior season. Players like this and the other third-year guys, remember, they signed to play at Miami after a 5-7 season. These young men, when they signed December of 2022, made that decision to be Miami Hurricanes when this program was down, right? It would have been very easy for these guys. Rueben Bain could have gone to Alabama. Francis Mauigoa could have gone to any program in the country as the number one offensive tackle. Mark Fletcher was committed for 8 months to Ohio State, and he made the choice to stay home and play in South Florida and make Miami a great football program again. These guys could have done just what Jeremiah Smith did and run away to a team that was closer to contending at that very moment. But instead, these guys decided to become building blocks for change at the University of Miami. Now, CC is not a South Floridian. He has adopted this community. This community welcomes him, but he made the decision to come here. Rueben, Bain, and Mark Fletcher made the decision to stay here and represent the 305. And we're so grateful that they did, because, again, the program was 5-7 when these guys committed here. They could have gone anywhere in the country, but they chose to build Miami, and look what they've been able to do. Rueben, Bain, CC, Mark, these guys are of the final 8 teams standing. They have a chance to win a national championship. I appreciate them so much. I'm also grateful for Miami's administration, from the president's office of Joe Echeverria to the AD office of Dan Radakovich, to Miami's coaches, down to Cam Gorby and his media staff, all the way to the equipment managers. Like, everyone associated with Miami athletics are aligned in their vision, and they are committed to this process of excellence. So that's what I'm grateful for on this Christmas Eve, folks. And see if I got the quotes here. Mark Fletcher, again, we talked this week about him coming back, staying at Miami for his senior football season, which is, that was never a guarantee. A lot of running backs, because that position is so, it's so physically demanding, and a lot of running backs in the NFL, don't have long careers because of the nature of the position they play. Running backs don't tend to stay for their senior seasons if they don't have to. But Mark Fletcher is coming back for 2026. He said, "I have another year. I'm a true junior with another year guaranteed, and I love this team. I love this organization. I love this culture, and I just want to spend one more time with my brothers while I can," he said. And he talks about loving the culture. A lot of that culture is Mark Fletcher. Like, Mark is someone so important behind the scenes. Like, his leadership, the influence he has over that locker room, the positivity and the passion he has. He's humble about it. He's always humble. But Mark Fletcher has a lot to do with why the culture is so great this year behind the scenes. And, man, I'm so grateful for him. And Fletcher's coming off his best game as a Hurricane. 172 yards. It's a career high. Set up the game-winning touchdown drive, 10 yards per carry, had his career high 56-yard run in that game. Something else that I know we're going to be thinking about and talking about before New Year's Eve. Would you rather be in the spot Ohio State is in, where they're going to have the more rested team? They haven't played a game in about a month. Miami comes off a really physical game. You have some players banged up. Like, we feel good about these guys playing again. Jacoby Thomas, Mo Torre, Zechariah Poyser, Mario Cristobal basically said, like, we expect these guys to be good to go for the Ohio State game. But Miami just played a physical, demanding game. They didn't have the benefit of the extra time off. Ohio State had the bye week. Now, last year, all the teams with bye weeks did not fare well in the CFP. So, I mean, we only have the 1-year sample size, because prior to that, it was 4 teams, no bye weeks. But in the very short history of first-round byes, the teams that do play the week before, including Ohio State last year, they had to play an opening round game. The teams that do play have had the advantage. So hopefully that carries over into this season, where, OSU having the bye, we got to hope they come out a little rusty and Miami can take advantage. I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure you smash that like button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club All Access tier. Click the link in the show notes below, and we'll talk to you next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.